Islam's prophet, Muhammad, preached a message of social justice from the earliest days of his mission. Consider the following words from his last sermon, delivered 2 months before his death. All mankind is from Adam and Eve. An Arab has no superiority over a non-Arab, nor a non-Arab has any superiority over an Arab. Also, a white person has no superiority over a black person, nor a black any superiority over white, except by piety and good action. And later, even as the fingers of the 2 hands are equal, so are human beings equal to one another. No one has any right nor any preference to claim over another. You are brothers. Perhaps such empowering lessons and the positive social changes that arose from them during Muhammad's lifetime are unknown or overlooked in the West today. And perhaps the positive has got lost among the many very negative societal changes and oppression that also have occurred in the region at different times in its history. The subject of this lecture is the dawn of Islam, which is how I'm going to refer to Muhammad's first revelation and the events that followed during the remainder of his lifetime. Now, in any discussion of the 1400 years of Islamic and Middle Eastern history, this is a peerless moment, a turning point among turning points. Without Muhammad's account of his mysterious revelation in a mountain cave, there would have been no prophetic mission, no preaching to the masses, no converts, no Islam, and an impossible to imagine alteration in global history from that moment in time until the present day. While I, and most non-Muslim scholars, tend to refer to Muhammad as the founder of Islam, or as Islam's founding prophet, Muslims typically would not agree with this description. Instead, Muhammad is viewed as the last in a line of prophets that are also thought to have included Adam, Abraham, and Moses, and Jesus. In this view, God appointed Muhammad last to restore Abrahamic monotheism to its original perfect form. Indeed, in the Muslim tradition, Islam is a primordial faith that has always existed. It is a system of beliefs in which the Jewish prophets, John the Baptist, and Jesus are viewed as early messengers. Now, I offer no views on Muhammad's claims, nor of Islam as a faith. While setting aside such faith-based matters, I will attempt to reassemble historical events as they took place to the best of our knowledge. Islam, after Christianity, is the world's second largest religion when measured by numbers of followers. In our own times, many of the controversies surrounding the faith, including jihadist acts of civil and political strife, such as murder, terrorism, and other forms of violence, are rejected by most Muslims themselves for violating some of the most basic precepts of Islamic theology. But then, as Shakespeare put it, the devil can cite scripture for his own purpose. So let's begin with a few facts, or as close as we can get to facts. Because of the general lack of written sources from the period, the historical accuracy of what I'm about to address is fraught with difficulties. The lack of contemporary written accounts has led to much speculation on everything from dates and locations of certain events to whether or not Muhammad even existed. Given that there are any number of contemporary eyewitness accounts, this last claim seems a little wild, to say the least. Still, in early Islamic history, we're rarely on solid evidential ground, at least by the standards required in the present day. Of course, one could make much the same observation about discussing the life and times of Christ and all the Old Testament prophets. The fact remains that someone was responsible for the dramatic changes that occurred during Muhammad's lifetime.
The word Islam means submission, essentially submission to the will of Allah, the only God in this monotheistic religion. One who accepts the Islamic faith is a Muslim, or one who has submitted. The Islamic faith and the early cultural practices associated with it were influenced by the desert environment and Bedouin traditions of the Arabian Peninsula. The Arabian Peninsula is huge, over 1 million square miles in area, but most of it is desert. It is also technically its own continent because it is an independent tectonic plate that is pulling away from Africa, expanding the Red Sea as it moves, and heading towards the Eurasian plate, forcing up the Zagros Mountains that separate Iran from Iraq today. It is surrounded on 3 sides by ocean, so it has always been strategically well placed to link into long-distance trade routes via maritime trade ports in the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf, but also by overland routes via Palmyra and Damascus to the Mediterranean. It was in Mecca, a city about 40 miles inland from the Red Sea coast, that Muhammad ibn Abdullah was born about 570 CE. Both of Muhammad's parents died when he was 6, so he was raised by his uncle and grandparents. Muhammad was employed by and eventually married a wealthy widow named Khadija. By the age of 30, he was one of many successful merchants living in Mecca, where the people recognized many gods and where there were both Jewish and Christian communities. In his late 30s, around the year 610, Muhammad had a profound spiritual experience and became convinced that rather than the host of deities worshipped by some of his fellow Meccans, there was in fact only one all-powerful God named Allah, the Arabic word for God, and that recognition of other gods was wrong. Muhammad interpreted the visions he was experiencing as revelations from Allah, delivered through his messenger, the Archangel Gabriel. Without necessarily meaning to found a new religion, he told his family and friends about these revelations, and by 620, a loyal group of followers had joined Muhammad's circle. As Muhammad recounted the messages he had received, some of his followers began to write them down. By the early 650s, these written texts had been compiled as the Quran, a word that means recitation. The Quran quickly became the holy book of Islam. In beautiful poetic writing, the Quran expounds Muhammad's understanding of Allah and his relationship to the world and all humanity. It has remained the definitive authority for the Islamic faith ever since. But the growing popularity of Muhammad's preachings brought him into conflict with the rulers of Mecca, both for political reasons and because Muslim monotheism offended the polytheistic Arabs. As tensions with Arab elites increased, some of his followers were forced to flee to Ethiopia, the first of several waves of Muslim migrants and conquerors that would move into the African continent. Eventually, the pressure became so intense that Muhammad and about 70 of his followers left Mecca and moved to the rival trading city of Yathrib, about 200 miles north of Mecca. Various Arab and Jewish clans living in the city soon converted to Islam, and Muslims later started referring to Yathrib as Medina, a word that means the city, but in this context means the city of the Prophet. This migration in 622, the Hijrah, marks the year 1 of the Islamic calendar, and also the moment at which the spiritual visions experienced by Muhammad were transformed into a serious religious but also social and political movement. Muhammad's faith was based on 5 obligations, now known as the 5 pillars of Islam. The first pillar is that Muslims must acknowledge Allah as the only God and Muhammad as the last prophet. The second is that the faithful must pray to Allah daily or facing Mecca. The third obligation is that Muslims must fast during the daylight hours of the month of Ramadan. The fourth is that they must contribute alms for the relief of the poor. And the final pillar, following Muhammad's personal example, was that all Muslims must try and undertake the Hajj to the Kaaba in Mecca at least once in their lives. As with most world religions and associated law code, the Sharia law later emerged to offer the faithful guidance on all aspects of daily life. The Sharia was inspired by the Quran and compiled by religious experts. It offered precise guidance on a range of social, political, and economic behaviors, such as marriage, inheritance, slavery, business dealings, and crime. It was partly because of the comprehensiveness of the Sharia that Islam became more than a religious doctrine, but a way of life with a complete set of social and ethical values. By the time of Muhammad's death in 632, a substantial part of Arabia was under Muslim control. The Prophet was buried in Medina, and his advisors selected one of his closest disciples to serve as caliph or civil and religious head of the Muslim state. The question of Muhammad's succession remains, however, one of the most controversial in all Islam. According to Sunni tradition, the first caliph was Abu Bakr al-Siddiq, who was recognized as head of state, military commander, chief judge, and chief religious leader. A prime example of the evolution and consolidation of secular, spiritual, and legal power during the era of agrarian civilizations. Under Abu Bakr and his successors, the jihad continued. After conquering the remaining non-Muslim tribes of Arabia, Muslim armies turned northwards to confront the huge but now somewhat complacent Byzantine and Sasanian empires. The lightning-fast expansion of the Dar al-Islam was unprecedented, even during an era in which many great empires grew rapidly to enormous size in their search for tribute and land. By 637, just 5 years after Muhammad's death, Syria, Palestine, and all of Mesopotamia had fallen. During the 640s, much of North Africa was incorporated into the Islamic realm. And by the time the Sasanian imperial heartland of Persia fell to the Muslims in 651, the Dar al-Islam stretched from the Mediterranean to Afghanistan. After a period of political consolidation, Islamic armies resumed the jihad early in the 8th century. Several kingdoms of northern India were conquered in 711, and Muslim hegemony in North Africa was extended to Morocco and then across the Straits of Gibraltar and into Spain by 718. In an era characterized by substantial civilizations, the Islamic realm had expanded in less than a century to be the largest civilization the world had ever seen.
Muhammad is referred to in the Islamic tradition as the seal of the prophets, meaning the last in a line. While that again is an expression of faith, to which it is difficult to assign a fact or facts, it's incontestable that his mission brought about profound changes that make his life, particularly the last 22 years of it, a turning point that set in motion changes on an incalculable scale. To get a sense of what that means in practical terms, the Arabian Peninsula that Muhammad made the center of the worldwide Islamic faith covers a sizable 1.25 million square miles, making it roughly 1/3 of the total landmass of the United States or continental Europe. But no more than 1 in 5 Muslims the world over live in the Middle East. Today, the Muslim faith numbers about 1.6 billion and accounts for about 23% of the global population. There are more Muslims in India and Pakistan combined than in the whole of the Middle East. It's the world's second largest religion and very much a global faith. Indeed, the country with the largest Muslim population is Indonesia, which is quite a ways from Arabia. The conflation of Muslims with Arab is a common error, and no doubt comes about in large part because of the centrality of the Arabs and of the Arabic language and of the Arabian Peninsula in the birth and early history of Islam. That said, the fact that Muhammad's message impacted the religious, political, and social life of the era he inhabited is also significant. It demonstrates his view that religion couldn't be a private matter, removed from the real world in which people live and operate. Instead, as Montgomery Watt put it, his message was a total response of his personality to the total situation in which he found himself, responding not only to the religious and intellectual aspects of the situation, but also to the economic, social, and political pressures to which contemporary Mecca was subject.